Welcome and thank you for being here. In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to paint detailed mushrooms in a misty forest. I'll show you how to blend and create a blurry background with acrylics step by step, how to add grass, moss, and how to add color on top of each other to create highlights and make our painting stand out. And finally, how to detail our mushrooms and make them look vibrant with color. So let's get to it and go over the materials needed for today. For canvas, I'm using a 14 by 14. It's a gallery style, already has gesso coat on it. So all I did to prepare this canvas is add a glaze of water, and that tightens up the loose ends. For brushes, I'm going to use two of my M1 blending brushes. We're going to use an M2 blending brush. It's the same style, just a size smaller. From my 4-piece brush set, I'm going to use my number 8 and number 4 brushes. They're the same, just a size smaller. I use these a lot. And we also have a 1/2 inch flat brush inside and a 0 detail brush for all the little fine details we're gonna add to our painting. I am gonna use an artist sponge for this piece. This is a small one, right? And they come in different sizes. I bought it in a pack, so I chose one that I thought would work best for this painting. And you could use any size, and it doesn't have to look exactly like mine, but something like this. And if you don't have this, don't worry about it. You could use a number 8 or number 4 brush for the grass effect. It just makes it a little easier and creates an interesting texture. That's why I like using these. For paint, I'm going to use my 24 set of acrylics as always, and I'll show you which colors from this set. We need lemon yellow, orange, scarlet red, sap green, viridian, raw sienna, and lamb black. From my 5 set of acrylics, I'm gonna use titanium white. For palette, I'm gonna use my palette paper here. You could use any palette you have available. I like to use this one because it comes in 40 sheets. Basically, once you're done painting, you could just tear the sheet off and start fresh. We need a palette knife to mix your paint, a jar of water, and some paper towels to wipe your palette knife and or dab your brushes like number 8, number 4. If you have too much paint, clean it out, or if you have too much water, just dab it like this. And finally, if you have a hairdryer, go ahead and use that. It just saves some time. We want it to be dry before applying our next layers. Or you can wait about 20-30 minutes and it naturally dries. Acrylic painting is all about layering, and the more layers you add, the more solid it'll become, and you can create a little bit with a damp brush, create smooth transitions. And I'll be showing you every step in this painting, and as you know in my other tutorials, hopefully you can learn a lot from this lesson. Please let me know in the comments what is your favorite tutorial. I'd love to hear your feedback, and if you have any suggestions for future, let me know. I always say this, you can use any materials you have available, but if you're interested in using my materials, check out ColorByFeliks.com for more details. Okay, I'm going to quickly explain what we're going to do. I like to work in sections, and I like to start from the furthest distance and work my way to whatever is closest to me. I think that's the easiest way to work with acrylics. We're going to work on adding the background, right? We're going to have a little bit of glow of light coming through some trees. It's going to be kind of a blurry effect, so we're going to add faraway trees, so about like, this much will be the sky faded and forest in the back, and then from there's going to be some far away moss and grass and things like that, and then as it gets closer there's going to be like a little bit of hill or like grass, moss growing here with some mushrooms in the middle. So the focus is going to be on the mushrooms. So we're going to quickly mix colors for our background sky and also add the base to our background right here. I'd encourage you to take breaks. I don't paint this in one day myself. That way you enjoy the process and you're not rushed. Let's pick up our titanium white, and in the corner we're going to start to add about 2 thumbs amount. And by the way, I do have a color mixing guide. If you want to know exactly the ratio and the amount I'm using, you can download that in the description down below. Next, we're going to add a little less, maybe 1.5 thumbs amount right here. And then each time go a little bit less. And we're going to create, let's start with 4 colors. We might add one more, but you could see this one's like 1/2 thumb amount. Always close your lid once you're done squeezing paint so paint won't dry out. Next, we're gonna squeeze lemon yellow, a little bit of that in here, and a little bit right here, very small amount. Okay, close the lid. Next, we're gonna add scarlet red. We're gonna add a little bit on this one, and that's it. Very small amount of red. And then Viridian. I'm gonna add Viridian, about this much, a little more than the red, but we still added white, more white, right? And now I'm gonna add a little bit in here as well, and to our last one. And then I'm gonna add sap green to make it a little greener, because when things get closer, they become more vibrant in color and sharper. So green, sap green is stronger. This is more leaning towards like a bluish green, because it's further away, things are more like, you know, misty looking. And then finally with the lamp black, we're gonna add a touch in here, very small amount, not a lot, and then more on this one. Okay, a little more on this one. So let's see what we get. I'm gonna quickly mix these and pick up my palette knife and start with the lightest color. This is our base layer for our background. So I'm gonna quickly mix that and see what we get. And then once you're done mixing, you just pile it up like this and continue to the next. This is going to start turning into pink color, which we want, but not too much red. We want it to be still pretty light. Okay, that's good enough. I'm going to pile it up like this. And then you could take part of the paint here and add it to our next color. This is all going to be mixed. This is going to start to turn a little darker each time. And that's what we want. And this is a good color right here. It's not too strong, but it's still darker than this pink color we have mixed. So that's good right there. And finally, I'm going to take part of that for fun. And this one will be our darkest color for this first part. All right. So something like this and you'll be good to go. I'm going to quickly dab my palette knife in the water jar all the way and then wipe it off with a paper towel so that paint won't dry out. Next, I'm going to pick up my water jar and one of my M1 blending brushes. I'm going to dab it all the way in the water and then squeeze part of the water out. All right. There's still some water, but it's not dripping. It's not a lot. Water helps keep acrylics stay wet a little longer, which gives you some time to add all the colors where you want it to be. And then with a dry blending brush, we're going to blend everything quickly and it'll create a smooth blend. This is a quick process and I'd encourage you to practice this part. And once you catch the technique, it's super easy and fast. This usually takes me between, I would say, 3 to probably 10 minutes if the canvas is bigger to do the blending part. So I have a water jar next to my canvas where it's going to be easy access, right? And when I say I'm dabbing my brush in the water, just a tip, I'm just going gently like this to pick up more water if I need to, if I feel like it's dragging, right? We want it to feel like you're spreading butter, like it's running smooth on canvas. But you don't want water to be dripping, okay? If it starts to drip, I'd encourage you to pick up more paint and kind of swirl it and try to equalize it and blend it. So with a little bit of water in my brush, I'm going to start with the lightest color right here, right? And we're going to quickly, randomly, remember, we're going to cover the whole canvas, so it's going to be pretty fast. So I'm going to pick up all this paint and I'm going to start randomly. You see bubbles? That's great, but the water's not dripping. That's pretty good right there. Okay, I'm gonna just add it, cover the whole canvas like this. Pick up the paint, randomly add it. And remember, this is our first layer, so. And then as we go in, it's gonna get a little bit darker, so I'm not gonna add too much there, but about this much is good. Okay, and now I'm gonna lightly dab my brush in the water, just the tip, pick up the next color, this pinkish color, and right where we added. I'm not blending yet, but I am adding a little bit of the pink on the bottom and around. So I'm gonna dab my brush in the water because I feel it's a little bit dragging. I'm gonna add that in here. I want the glow to be more on the left side here. Okay. So a little more pink, a little more paint, and don't focus on blending yet. Focus on just adding your paint first, real quick. Okay, I'm gonna dab my brush in the water because I feel it dragging here. And then the next color we're gonna add is this. Actually, let's mix it with the pink randomly here. A little bit more pink, why not? Mix it with the green. It's all gonna be covered when we add the trees, but it'll be a nice background layer. Okay. Lightly start to create a smoother transition. Okay, I'm gonna dab my brush in the water, pick up more of this green, a little more green, more paint. And as you go down, finally, we're gonna just cover everything with the darkest green color we've mixed. Real quick, I'm just gonna cover it, okay, with some water. And I did dab my brush in water, so it can run smooth. So I'm gonna dab my brush slightly in the water, just a tip, pick up more color here, and quickly add a glaze real quick, okay? Spread the paint nicely. And why I like to swirl, because it, you know how canvas has this texture, it fills in all the cracks in my canvas. That's why I like to swirl like this. Okay, and quickly now, I'm gonna put my brush in the water jar so that my brush won't dry out. And now I'm gonna pick up a dry blending brush, right, M1, and start with the lightest area, swirl and gently blend, okay? Gently blend and take away all the brush strokes. And this does not have to be perfect. This is just to create a solid, clean, smooth kind of background, because we're going to be adding more layers on top. So we just want something like this, right? But we don't want it does not have to be like a perfect blend, because it's a forest scene and there's going to be a lot of like grass and things like that in our background. So it's all going to be a lot of random details. But we just want to take away the brush strokes and cover the canvas as the base and take away the white canvas showing through. That's what we want. So you could see it's a nice transition from lightest to darkest. Okay, and there you have it. Quick blend, easy blend. I'm gonna let this dry, and I'm gonna wash my brushes so they won't sit in the water too long, and then we will continue to the next section. My background is dry. I got new water, and my blending brushes are clean. And the way I clean them is I use a little bit of brush soap or dish soap on the palm, and then swirl it over running warm water, and then use paper towel to kind of dry out the brush and kind of fluff it back up like this. Very easy and fast, and that gave me a little bit of time for it to fully dry. Now I'm gonna put my number 8 and number 4 brushes into the water jar so it could sit for a few minutes, and that'll make it nice and damp while we mix our colors. So the next part will be adding the sketches of our trees and starting to add a little bit more placements where we want things to be. So for our background, so I added about half a thumb amount of white here, okay, and then raw sienna, and then more Viridian and a touch of lamp black. And then here I added less white than this one, and then about the same amount of raw sienna, and then Viridian, more Viridian, and then a little more lamp black. And then as you could see, very small amount of white here, and then the same amount of raw sienna, a little bit less Viridian, and more lamp black. So this one should be the darkest because we added more black to this one. So I'm going to mix these and show you what I get. So when I was mixing, I decided to add a little more raw sienna, and because I'm adding that because I want it to lean towards more of a like a brownish green and warmer because of the light, right? The light's coming and it's hitting the trees, so I want it to look a little warmer, not too green, and raw sienna does that. So I added a little more here and a little bit more here, and a little more on this one. All right, so something like this. You can see like a greenish, kind of has a little bit of that warmer tone, brown, leaning towards brown because of raw sienna. Same thing with this one. It makes it look more earthy, more neutral. Because these are further away trees, I don't want to add too much contrast to them. Now I'm going to take out my brushes and put them flat and use my number 8 brush. Dab it on the paper towel so it won't be too wet, but it's nice and soft, my brush. And this will be the first layer and quick sketch of the placement of our trees. Let's start with this lightest green with a little bit of water, right? We're going to add our faraway trees. Remember, I don't want the trees to be too low. This is the center of the canvas, right here. So actually, I'm going to go a little higher. So the landscape, the land where the sky meets the land, it's going to be like somewhere right here. Okay? I want to keep it pretty high up. So I want a little bit of the sky showing. So starting from this corner, and if I go a little lower, I'll correct it later, but somewhere around there, I'm just going to eyeball it and guess. So right now I'm using water and this color first, and just adding first layers. First tree right there. And with a little bit of water, I'm going to dab my brush in water, tap it on the paper towel again, pick up more paint. It just makes it run smoothly. And I'm going to add another layer, glaze, all the way to the top. And it's going to be a little blurry, so some of the branches are going to be faded. So I'm going to start to add that a little bit, but not too much. We're going to do that with the second layer over the trees. But I'll start adding a little bit. So a little bit here, you could see with water, it's adding a little bit of it makes it more blended and see-through. Okay, so something like this. Some will be a little sharper, some will be less sharp, but that's good enough. And then just add a little bit of that green in here on the bottom. Okay, something like that. Okay, next, with the same color, I'm going to add a small little branch, kind of going in, very small, letting it fade out like this. Okay, that's good enough there. And now I'm going to go to the next darker one because this one's going to be a little bigger, so the next color, I'm going to dab my brush in water, like always, and tap it on the paper towel. So we have a little bit of water and paint, and I'm going to start to add my next tree. So the next tree, I'm going to add it right in here, kind of going down like this. And it's also going to be blurry, and it's going to be a little bigger, but something like that. Okay, maybe a little wider, why not? Like this. And then we're going to have some branches here from this tree, a little bit, kind of like what we did with that one. It's going to be faded. Going to add that first quick layer, glaze. Start to add a little bit of darker colors. A little bit, not too much. Okay, something like this. Maybe there's something far away in there, bushes and things like that. So I'm just going to add that in there. Okay, that's good enough for now. Next, I'm going to let's add this next same color. We're going to add another tree right next to it. And it's just going to go all the way right there. It's going to lean sideways like this. And we're going to make this one pretty big. So I'm going to have it be up to this point, and it's going to kind of curve. So something like this. Okay. And just around the edges, I'm going to add a little bit of the first layer, make it faded. Okay. Okay. And in here, I'm going to dab my brush in water, tap it on the paper towel, this darkest color, and fill it in. Real quick, fill in with the darkest color, because this tree is going to be pretty dark. It's closer to us, so it's going to have that nice darker tone to it. Okay, something like this. And I'm going to go back to the lightest color. I'm not going to clean my brush. I'm just going to use the lighter color, and right on the edge I'm going to start to add a little bit more details to my tree. Maybe it's transitioning from the dark to a little bit of the lighter, because we still want to make it look blurry like this. Okay. All right, now I'm going to dab my brush in the water, tap it on the paper towel, use the lightest color again, and continue adding our faraway trees. This one, I'm going to kind of make it go like this. And then with water, add a little bit of faraway branches that are faded to the background. Okay, let's add another tree right here. And there's no right way of doing it, just wherever you think would look best. And make them look, not too straight. You want to give variety. So some maybe there's some fallen ones, whatever you want, That's what makes the painting interesting. If you make curves and trees going this way, that way, not too much, but just a little bit, variety. That will make it look more of a interesting painting when you add those things. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit more branches, things that are faded far away in here. Okay, with the lightest color again. Okay, the lightest color and some water. Just randomly add that in here. Maybe some branches are faded and showing through in here. Okay. All right, next we're going to use this middle color again. And we're going to add another tree. Another tree that will be right about here. And it's going to kind of be going this way, but not too much, not like that one. Like this. And we're going to make this one not as big, but about this big. Okay. So you can dab my brush in the water, tap it on the paper towel, and use the darkest color to fill it in. And let it fade out. And we're going to add a little bit of branches and things. From that tree, okay, dab my brush in the water, tap it on the paper towel, and here I'm going to start to add a little bit more of a transparent, darker Viridian green here, and we're going to just start to go over and really cover this area. Skip some areas. You want that background to show through a little bit, but we want this to be a little darker. Like this. You could see some are shining through, the light coming through, but not a lot. And as you go down, we're going to use this middle color again with water. It's going to get a little more darker. Something like this, all right? And again, these are the first layers, so it'll look rough. And so with the middle color again, we're going to add a couple more trees. Going straight, let's make this one straight. Up and down, and not as big, so about this big. Let's use the darkest color, make it dark here. Okay, and again, we're gonna start to use this middle color to add a little bit of dab my brush lightly in the water, tap it on the paper towel so it'll run smoothly. I'm going to start to skip some areas and add that fade. A little more of this color, and there's going to be a big tree right here, but then the rest is going to be covered. So a little more darker. Okay, so now I'm going to add the darkest color with water and paint. We're going to add a big tree right in here. Next to, and we're gonna probably have it come down all the way. Bring it down with the darkest color. We're just gonna cover this. A little more. And we just get in the layout first, or where the light and the darker trees will be, right? And so continue with the dark. And here, I'm going to kind of raise it up. I'm going to make this pretty dark in the background. Maybe use the middle color. Dab it in the water a little bit. And then I'm going to add some trees that are far away. So this area is going to be pretty dark. as you can see. All right, I'm gonna mix one more color and we're gonna continue working our way down. But I added a thumb amount of Viridian, small amount of lamp black, and a very small amount of titanium white. I'm gonna mix this, and this will be more leaning towards a bluer Viridian, less of that, because you know, these colors are more leaning towards like a more of a neutral brownish color because we added raw sienna. I want this one to be a little more brighter green, as you could see, more bluer green, just to create like a little fade in here. So something like this, okay? Sometimes if you want, you can also add a little bit of phthalo blue, a touch, just to make it a little bluer, or cerulean blue, or even cobalt blue will be fine, but phthalo blue would be best. But you don't have to. I'm not going to, but you could if you wanted to add a little more blue in here. So I'm going to quickly add our first kind of glaze of this color from where we left off, right here. And just with water and this color, I'm going to add like a darker glaze here, and work our way down. And a little bit in here. We're just making this background a little bit more darker. Okay, continue on. I want to add that in here. Dab it in the water, tap it on the paper towel. Let's use this lighter green. Mix it in. Okay, and then go back to this blue. Greenish blue, sorry. And as you go down, let's use the darker color right in here. And then dab it in the water, tap it on the paper towel. Let's use the darker, even a darker color as we go down. Randomly mix those together. It's going to look rough because this is our kind of second layer, laying the foundation, laying kind of like the placements first, and then we will be adding more details to it. So now I'm going to continue. Let's add the lighter green and add it in here. And then we can go to this more of a Viridian green, randomly mix those. And as you go down, you can obviously, you know, let's go first. Let's finish this area. Dab my brush in water, use this lighter color, and randomly mix that. And there will be mushrooms here, so a lot of this is going to be covered, but as I'm going down, I'm going to start to transition quickly to the darkest color. Right here. Darkest color. So dab my brush lightly in the water, tap it on the paper towel, and use this darker color. And before I continue, so I'm going to stop right there. This is good enough. Before I continue adding any more details, I'm gonna lay out my placements of my mushrooms next, so that I won't be spending too much time adding our third layer right on top right here and making it nice and clean, and then you cover a lot of those because of mushrooms, right? So this is good enough for now. and then the rest we're gonna work later. But we're just gonna be getting the quick sketch of the mushrooms, and then from there we're gonna go back and start to add another layer to the background trees here, make it more cleaner. Because right now you can see the brush strokes and it looks pretty rough. So I'm gonna let this dry. I'm gonna quickly mix a few colors for the mushrooms. I added a little bit of white, half a thumb amount, and then orange, and then a little less white and more scarlet red here. Something like this. Again, we're going to be adding more layers to our mushrooms. This is just to give us an idea and the layout where we want the mushrooms to be. All right, I'm going to dab my number 4 brush in the water and tap it on the paper towel, and it's nice and damp. I'm going to quickly start to lay out with these two colors. This is like a light orange and darker pink with water, and this orange real quick start to shape out, get an idea of where I want my mushrooms to be. So first mushroom, I'm gonna have it right where this tree is, maybe more to the left. So the first one will probably be, I'm guessing, let's make it right circular. And you can make it as big as you want, so maybe like this. And this one's gonna be kind of bending that way, so you'll see like little details. So I'm going like a circular motion, right? And it doesn't have to be a perfect circle, so it could be a little more messy if you want. So something like this, and then I'm gonna have right here in the middle, I'm gonna have it come, I'm dabbing my brush in water, come down, kind of looping down and fading out. You can make it as big as you want. I might even make it bigger, but this is just to give us, maybe actually let's make it even wider and bigger. I want it to be more, not too circle. Right there, that's better. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna dab my brush in water, continue with that orange, and right here next to this one, we're gonna add another one. This one's gonna be kind of overlapping, and we're gonna make this one not too tall, but it's gonna go this way. Something like this, okay? A little bigger than that one. And then we're gonna have it come down right in the middle, somewhere right in here. And I'm gonna make this one a little bigger because it's closer to us. So dab my brush in water, and so it can run smoothly and pick up more of that orange. Kind of glaze it randomly. You can bring it down about this much. Right, and we're gonna obviously correct, make it nicer, things like that. But this is just to give us an idea. Maybe make this one a little less, maybe more straight down. And then there's gonna be some little ones, you know, so some little ones right here. Something like this. Okay, maybe there's a few little ones, but they're taller. And then one that's a baby right here, baby mushroom. And we're gonna correct it later. I'm gonna add a couple more. I'm gonna add another mushroom right in here. Let's add another one with orange. Dab it in the water. Pick up more paint, my brush. And we're going to bring it down. Something like that. Okay. And I'm going to add make it a little bigger on this one. You know, all these little details we're going to work on as we get to them. But I want to make sure I'm happy with my placement of the mushrooms before I really continue working on adding more details. So this one, for example, I'm going to make it a little taller. Just a little taller. Wider. I put it more to the right, but you can put it more towards the middle. Okay, so I might even correct this and make it more towards the middle. You know, bring it a little more in. So this will be moved. All this is going to be moved. But that's okay, you know. That is why you add the sketch first, get the placement before working on finalizing your background, right? So for example, I'm going to correct some of these like with a darker color. I'm going to go in and, you know, try to correct these areas and try to bring my mushrooms a little bit this way. So now I'm going to, with my number 8 brush, quickly with the red, just for fun, add a little bit of color just as the base. You know, we already started, why not add the colors where we will have the mushrooms be, right? With the pink, red, right? And then go back to the orange and kind of blend those randomly in. And we will go over this again. Okay, we're just getting an idea and placement first. So a little more orange. Okay, and we can use a little bit of the green, why not? A little, or I mean this darkest color, and go in here, try to add a little bit more detail, but not too much. But you could start to see a little bit of details in our mushrooms. All right, that's good enough right now. I'm not gonna add too much anymore. I'm gonna go back right now. I'm gonna put the camera in, and with the colors we have here, I'm gonna play with adding another layer to our trees right here. If you've been enjoying this lesson so far and want to help support this channel, check out my Patreon. It's a great way to be a part of the creative process and help keep these tutorials ad-free and accessible to everyone. Inside Patreon, you'll get access to high-res reference photos, commercial-free versions of my YouTube lessons, behind-the-scenes content, and you can even help me vote on future painting topics. It's a small way to support this free content, but it makes a big difference. Thank you to everyone who supported me over the years. I appreciate you all. Now let's get back to painting. I did raise the mushroom was lower right here. I just kind of used the paint, the greens, and erased part of it and made this one taller. I want this one to be taller, closer to the trees. And then I moved this one here. Remember, your positioning could be different. I just placed it where I thought would look good. And I will go over this again and I'll show you when I start to add another layer. You'll start to see where I place it. Let's continue getting our second layer with our number 8 brush. And we have a little bit of paint left, so we're gonna probably have to mix some more. So with this lightest color, I'm gonna quickly, with a damp brush, go over certain areas like right here. Start to add a little more color, a little more fade. And you see, even adding that second layer with water and paint, it makes it look softer takes away the roughness. And we want it to be blurry. We want the background colors to be less sharp, more softer. So this second layer is really going to bring it together nicely. And our third layer, we're going to add a little more details and make it even more softer, and you'll see. And it's totally up to you how much layers you want to add, right? So with water, I'm adding a little more detail, the same color, this lightest color first. I'm going to use up this one. Kind of going over here, and I will skip some areas more against this tree right here, around this tree. Okay, it's going to look faded, so a little more of that color, this color, and we're going to continue adding that on this side. Right where this tree is, I'm going to add that fade, and then I'm going to use more of this color and try to add here. I want to lighten this area here, and I'll show you what I do to do that. And you can correct and adjust. It's very, very simple to do. Just going right where on the edge of where I added all my trees. I'm just gently glazing it with water in this lightest color first. And it's okay if you go over your mushroom. That is a rough sketch anyway. So here I'm going to make it a little darker. Skip some areas, dab my brush lightly in the water, continue on with this color, right? I'm going to continue glazing it right on the edge of our trees. Let's make this one a little darker on the bottom here. And then the light goes through and it becomes a little brighter on top. But something like this, you could start to see it's starting to look a little, faded and blurry, and that's what we want. So a little more on this side. Let's cover this, why not? Like this, right? And then I'm gonna dab my brush in the water, tap it on the paper towel. While I still have this paint, I'm going to continue adding that lighter color in here. Skip some areas. I like that some of these you can see through. So I'm just going on both the edges of my trees and adding that fade, that transition first. Okay, that's good enough right there. And I'm going to add that same thing here. I'm going to make this tree a little smaller here and bring a little bit of that in here. Okay, a little bit of okay. There you go. And now I did mix real quick white and lemon yellow. Just get a little bit of lemon yellow, kind of like the first layer we did for the background, remember? I just kind of mixed it randomly to get, a lighter color. For example, this area. I made my tree here. I moved it a little bit, this one, to the left. So I just moved it to the left and I took away about half an inch of my tree. And I'm going to add a little bit of that glaze, lighter glaze, right in here. I'm going to let it fade out, but just a little bit more of that lighter glaze. Even going over this tree a little bit. Okay, it's a lot of back and forth. Just glaze it like this. Maybe add a little bit more on top right in here, brighter area. And when you do add, your third layer, it's gonna look even more solid. So keep that in mind. This is first couple layers of our colors, but it's starting to look a little bit better, right? All right, so now I'm gonna dab my brush in the water and tap it on the paper towel. And now I'm gonna use a little bit of this next color, darker color, and we're gonna go over this tree right in the middle and let it fade, not everywhere, but just, you can see I'm skipping some areas and letting it fade. Okay, like this. And then this one, I'm gonna use a little more of that same color, a darker color, and we're gonna glaze it in the middle, go all the way to the top. Okay. And then here, I'm gonna use the same color on this side. And here I'm going to actually use the lighter color. I'm going to make it a little lighter in here. Maybe the light is glowing inside. Let's use a little bit of this light yellow and bring it in our tree right in here. Randomly, I want to transition, make it softer, like light is hitting it in the back, and then the darker area will be in the middle. So I'm going to use the darkest color now and add that right in here, the darkest color. All the way, bring it to the top with water and swirl your brush and kind of blend it to those colors you just added. And you can see this second layer is really starting to look a little softer and cleaner. That's what we want. Okay, and now I'm going to go back to this color with water and continue doing the same idea, except here I'm gonna go make it faded. So I like that it's faded right there, so I'm not gonna add too much right there. So I'm gonna skip some of these, so maybe add a little bit more right here. Let it be faded. Dip my brush slightly in the water. And let's use the darkest color for this tree. And right in the middle, like we did the other one, I'm going to add a little bit of a darker tone, let it fade. So I'm not going to bring it down too much. So I'm going to dab my brush in water and clean that dark color out. And with just this middle color, a little bit of it and some water, I'm going to kind of swirl where I left off with the dark color and try to make it softer around the edges. You could see, right? That fade from the darker tone going into the lighter area right here. So I'm going to add a little bit of darker colors in here, just a little bit. Maybe these are branches from this tree that are kind of blurry. You can almost see them, but they're not as detailed. So I'm adding a little more darker shadows. So I'm going to dab my brush in water and then use the lighter color to clean it out a little bit with water and go over your branches and try to make it a little softer. Okay, just like this. And you can do the same thing, maybe use a little bit of that middle color. Let's make this one a little darker on top so it could look a little more balanced. Okay, like this. Okay, dab my brush in water, tap it on the paper towel, and I use this lightest color, green, and go over the edges and make it as soft as I can. And it's okay if you go over your background. We're gonna add this cool effect. We're gonna make it look a little softer and cleaner on our final layer, third and fourth layer. We're gonna go over and make these cool circles fade, like to make it look like it's further and blurry away. So in here I'm going to make this a little darker just because I want it to be faded from this lighter and then faded to the darker colors. So I'm going to go over here and try to make this a little darker as well, because I was looking at it and it seems like it's missing a little bit of branches, faded branches, darker branches that are on this tree, like this. Okay, that's looking much better. We don't want it to look too bright on this corner. We want it to mainly have that glow right about here. Right here. Okay, and now I'm going to continue and adding our darkest color. Okay, our darkest color to this tree. And we're just going to glaze it over. Bring it down. Dab my brush in water and use the darkest color again. Really make this one dark. Okay, and as you go down, I'm going to use, remember this Viridian color, and if your colors are drying out, just mix some more. Okay, like I barely have any color here, so I would just add Viridian, a little bit of white, and a touch of black, very small amount, but but don't worry about trying to make it exactly like the one, this one. As long as it's pretty similar, you're good to go. The more different shades and colors you add to your painting, the actually better it is. So don't stress out. Try to make it look exactly like the colors you've mixed for your first layers. But you could see I'm kind of adding that nice faded color. Let's add a little bit of this, maybe darker color in here. We want to make this tree a little darker. Okay. Now my brush in water. And I'm gonna swirl and try to make this area a little darker, because this is where I want it to be more faded. You almost can't see this side. It's going into the woods more, in the forest. Okay. And I'm gonna add a little bit of this color and try to create, well, actually a darker color is fine. Try to create some, like we did here, branches that are faded in the back. A little bit, not too much. So now I'm gonna use a little bit of this color right here. Maybe mix it with this Viridian color and this darkest color. Randomly use this and then Viridian left over and quickly glaze it right in here. I want to make this area darker. Okay, a little more of this Viridian. And as you can see, when you're adding that next layer, it makes it more solid and less it makes it more blended, right? You don't see like brush strokes and things like that. And after this layer, I'll add one more layer and it really makes it even more softer. But we are gonna have some faded like branches and grass here, so we'll be doing that next. But right now I'm looking at this and I like the placement of my trees. Everything's good. The only thing is I think I'm going to mix some more color, because I have a couple colors here that I ran out. This one and this one's kind of running out. So I'm gonna actually start fresh, and this is a good time to take a break if you want, but I'm gonna mix some more colors and then we're gonna do one more layer on these trees and really make it look even cleaner and solid. And here are the colors. A little more than a thumb amount of white here, lemon yellow, a touch of Viridian, and then less white here, like a thumb amount, more Viridian and sap green, and then less white here, more Viridian, right, and lemon black here, and then very small amount of white here, and then more Viridian, the most, and then a little more lamb black. I'm going to mix these colors and show you what I get. So when I was mixing, I noticed that the colors were turning a little more brighter, like in color, and because these are further away, I don't want to add too much color. I want to make it more neutral, right? So I did add raw sienna a little bit here and a little bit right there, just to make it a little more neutral, not as vibrant, right? And finally, I did add, so these are the colors I got. I want to make one more darkest color. I'm going to take part of this color right here, this part of it like this, something like that. And then I added lamb black and Viridian just a little bit, but more lamb black. I'm going to quickly mix this so that I won't use black straight out of the tube. I want it to make it a little less dark, because I want to really add the darker colors to and more contrast to our closer things, right? So I still want the background a little more faded. That's why I'm adding all these colors to the black and not making it the darkest or using black, right? Because we want those still further away, faded, but we do want that to stand out and have a little, darker shadows, especially on the right side. And then I also added a little bit of white, thumb amount, and small amount of lemon yellow, like we did for our first layers. I want to start to, after I go ahead and work on, I'm going to play with these colors, and I'm going to start to add more brighter glow from the sun shining through some of these trees, and that will be our brightest color. All right, so these are the colors I got. So something like this, and you'll be good to go. So we're gonna now work on this background part and start to make it more cleaner, finalize it, and make it softer and blurry. And after that, we'll continue to the more of the middle section here and start to get the base sketch of the bottom here. I did add kind of like a little quick sketch as a hill, and I'll go over everything with you guys so you'll know where I'm at and all this stuff. But that's the plan. Now I'm going to zoom in the camera and we're going to work on this left side. All right, back to my number 8 brush. I left my brushes sitting when I was mixing. It's a new day. I'm going to start fresh, but if you are continuing on the same day, basically I just cleaned my water jar. You don't need to clean your water jar, but and then I made sure my brush is set for a few minutes so that brush can be soft and ready to go. So with my number 8 brush, I'm going to tap it on the paper towel so I won't have too much water. And I'm going to repeat the technique, repeat the process, and add another layer and make it look a little more softer. So with this tree, I'm going to add this third color that we've mixed. So something like this, and I'm going to kind of see how that looks. Use the corner of my brush, even go over it. It's okay if you go over the background colors, because we're gonna add that lightest yellow and create that cool effect. But we're just adding a glaze with water, this next detail. It'll just make it look softer. So a little bit of water and this you could see, and we're gonna just glaze it and go over some of these areas here. Using the corner of my brush, and I'm gently adding that glaze, and I'm not going to go over every part. I like that some of these brighter parts are showing through, so I'm just going to go over some areas that I see that looks a little rough and go around the edges of my tree, try to make it a little smoother transition to the dark colors. So a little more of this color, and you could use your number 4 brush as well if you'd like. Also works for this part if you're trying to be a little more careful, right, and work smaller. Both work. Okay. So I'm going to continue with this color, and I'm going to make this tree a little skinnier, and then this one I'm going to try to make it a little lighter. I'm going to bring this color down. And it's okay if you go over your mushroom, that's totally fine. Make this area a little darker in here. And I'm just going around the darker areas. Trying to make it a little softer looking. Okay, so I'm going to continue using this color, add a little more of this on this side. Dab my brush lightly in the water, tap it on the paper towel, continue with this color. I like this color. It's looking good for this part. It's making it more like a bluish green, not too vibrant and not too strong, but perfect glaze for this part. Okay, and then go over here and add that nice darker glaze and continue, and I'm going to add a little bit more lighter areas on this side, just a little bit. Okay, something like this. We'll fade it out like that. That's good. Okay, now I'm going to dab my brush and use a little bit of this next color. And I'm going to, well, let's add it right here first. Let's add it on this tree, right in the middle. And let it fade out, but mainly on the bottom here. Okay, kind of use your corner of your brush and try to blend those colors in, and in here as well. Let's add that. Make this tree a little less intense. So we're going to add more of this color, and we're just going to add that glaze in here. You could see that final layer, how nice that looks. I'm going to bring it up, and then in here I'm going to go back to this color, and I'm not going to clean my brush, just use this color because I want to blend some of these, make a soft transition between the light and the dark. Use the corner of my brush and just gently swirl and create that nice transition. Maybe even add that in here a little bit, going in little lighter colors on this side of the tree. Okay, and then I'm gonna dab my brush, clean it. I'm gonna clean it a little bit, tap it on the paper towel, and then here I'm gonna use a little bit of let's use this lighter green, just a little bit of this lighter green, and I wanted to kind of go over this section right here, this tree. Okay, with that lighter green, just use the corner of your brush and gently create that nice transition. Okay, and then also for this part, I want to actually make it a little lighter, less. Remember I said I want to make it skinnier, so I'm going to go use this color. I'm going to make this one a little skinnier, so I'm going to take some of this away. Okay, actually I'm going to switch my brush to real quick to number 4 for this part, and I'm going to use a little bit of this yellowish color. And I'm going to add gentle little circles. Okay, very gently. make it brighter. Dab my brush in water, tap it on a paper towel. Use more of this lighter color and try to make it not too big of a circle, but we want this one to be bright, right? And I'm slowly pressing, not pressing too hard, but I want to create these lighter glow, lighter little circles where the light is shining through and really making some of these areas brighter. Okay, gently swirl. Make sure your brush has a little bit of water, so I'm going to dab my brush in water, tap it on the paper towel, and a little bit of paint, not too much. I'm going to add these little circles. Swirl like this. Skip some areas. Make some smaller ones. Some will be a little bigger. Maybe this one's kind of going in here. You know, let's add one more in here. Faded one. Another faded one in here. Okay. And we'll add one brighter one right on top here. Maybe a little one right in here. Okay. Starting to see it more of a blurry looking. And then let's go back on the side, since we're already playing with the same color, a little bit of this lightest color with water. We're gonna add some brighter ones in here. Skip some areas and make some of them brighter, some of them less intense. This one could be bright in here. And you can add as many as you want, but we don't want to overdo it. We just want to gently add these little details to make our painting more interesting. Okay. All right, continue with that same color and a little bit of water, same technique. We're gonna go over and add a little more on this side, continue on where we left off. here I'm not gonna do too much. I want it to fade away, so I'm barely adding some in here. So a little one here, maybe in here. Okay, same thing here, just a few little ones. So let's use this one. And in here, I want to make it a little going in just a little bit into this tree. Not too much, just a little bit. So a little more of this color. Maybe a little darker, just right here on the bottom. Blend those two randomly together. So now I'm going to use this, actually mix those randomly together, two of them, and I want to make a transition from light going into that darker tree, right? Fade. Okay, let's use this color now. Okay, let's use a lighter color right in here. I want to kind of blend that in on the bottom and blend those together in so it could be a little lighter on in here. I'm going to create a nice fade like this. And then dab my brush in water. Let's use the darkest color right here and go over. Yeah, let's just use this darkest color and go over this one one more time. Okay, maybe add a little bit on top here. So let's go back to this color and try to create a softer transition. And then as you go down, let's use the darkest color again. Right here. And then right here, when we go down, I'm going to dab my brush lightly in water and then go back to this one and create a transition from this dark, maybe get the dark color again. And I want to create a transition from the dark going into a little bit of that light green color. So I'm going to clean my brush now and tap it on the paper towel. I'm going to use this color, maybe this one. Mix those two together and gently press and swirl. And we're going to create a little bit of a nicer transition. See how that works? We created that like almost like a fog going into a dark area here. We're going to be adding some branches and leaves here and things like that, but that's good enough for now. We just want to add that nice background smooth blend. And then in here on the bottom, it's going to be a different color. We're going to make it darker green right here for this part. But let's finish this section here, make it soft like we did here. And what I'm gonna do is dab my brush in water, use this color again. I really like this color, it's a nice green. It's not too strong, but also a nice transition. Blends in with our colors we've already added in the back, which is what we want. So I'm gonna add that, and then as I go in, I'm gonna use a little bit of this lighter green, a little bit of a lighter green, just on this area, and then as I go in a little more, I'm going into the darker colors again. So let's go back to this one, and then this next color. And just gently use your brush, swirl, and try to make it as soft as possible with water and paint. And you see this layer, when we adding this layer, right, you could see that it's making it very soft, right? Makes it look even smoother. That's what we want for our third layer. That's why it's all about layering. So a little more in here, I'm gonna swirl and blend those to this tree, and then as I go down here, I'm gonna use this darker color. I wanna make this side a little more darker shadow on this corner, so a little more of that darker color. And just blend those in. So I'm pressing using the corner of my brush, and I'm just gonna use, and I'm gonna go up to almost, this is half of the canvas, so I'm gonna go just an inch lower. That's where I ended. So this is halfway in the canvas, right? I'm just going an inch lower, and then I'm stopping. Okay, so now I'm gonna go back to my number 4 brush, and I'm gonna add a little bit more color, a little bit more vibrant colors, and I'll show you. So I'm gonna add lemon yellow. So lemon yellow, and then I'm gonna take part of this lightest color, just a little bit, not too much, lightest yellow, but I want more of this lemon yellow. I don't want it to be too bright, so I'm gonna add a little bit more, but I just add a little bit of that white color to make my lemon yellow not as vibrant, like this. Okay, you can even add a little more white, but let's try this out first. Let's try this green. We're gonna start to add more glow, more of a, for example, right here, right? I wanna add around certain areas, I wanna add a little bit of that bright green glow. And not everywhere, just in some areas where we think would look good. So with this color, continue. We're gonna add a little bit more brighter green color with water. Start to make it look like it's glowing and coming through those trees and that warm light, right? Just going over some of these parts. I'm gonna add a little bit in here. Okay, and I'm not gonna go in too much. I'm gonna stop pretty much right here. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna let that fade. Mainly wanted it more on this side. That's where the light is, so I wanna add a few of those brighter green colors. Okay, so that's good enough right there. And now I'm going to go back to the brightest color, this one, and go over some of these areas, like for example right here. I'm gonna make this a little more brighter. I want this one to be the brightest area. Maybe the light is coming through and really shining through this one and this one. So I'm gonna go over right now and create some of these a little brighter. Okay. Maybe add one that is in here. Why not? And you can also use your detail brush for the little circles if you'd like. For example, I'm gonna dab my detail brush in water, and let's just use this green. It's not too bright, but for these areas in here, I want to make some of these little ones. Maybe there's a lot of little ones shining through here. Very small circles. And make it faded. So I'm, adding that with water and creating that fade. That's how you create this transparent and blurry effect. Right, so I'm going to spend some time finalizing this, going back and forth until I'm happy with it. And once I'm done, I will show you what I get. And hopefully you can be happy with your progress so far. And from there, we're going to continue on this middle section. So I'm going to add a few more little ones, maybe in here, right? Wherever you think would look good. Make it faded. We don't want it to be sharp. So use water. Okay, moving on to the next part. You can see I spent some time going back and forth and adding all my little circles and the blurry effect and try to make it smooth. And you don't have to add as much, you could add a few and it'll be good. I like to overdo things, it's fun. So let's continue though and work on adding details to this middle section. And these are the colors I added. We're gonna add some like lighter grass effects. So a little bit of white, sap green, about the same amount, and lemon yellow. Less white here and more sap green here. And for our final color, thumb amount of black, lamb black, and sap green, a little bit less. I'm going to mix these. This will be our darkest. All right, first thing, I'm going to pick up my number 8 and dab it on the paper towel so it won't have too much water. And I'm going to make this a little more, because this is where the light of the sun, the warmest and brightest area here. I want to make this area a little brighter, just a little glaze of a green shade. And this is the color. Let's use the middle one with a little bit of water, not a lot of it. We're just going to add a glaze, okay? We're going to add a glaze right here and randomly kind of blend it in. And you don't have to do it perfectly. You can skip some areas, but we just want that green kind of color starting to happen. And then I'm going to fade it out. I'm not going to overdo it, just a little bit. That'll give it a nice warm feeling. Okay. And so now I'm going to add a little more on this side. A glaze. You almost can't see it, but it really does make a difference when you look at the painting in real life. These little details make a big difference. It's just sometimes in the video, it doesn't really show that well. But I do my best, you know. So now with my number 4 brush, I'm going to use the lightest color right here. And we're going to start to add some blurry, far away kind of little plants with a little bit of water randomly. We're going to just swirl, and some will be sharper than the others. And we're not going to make it too detailed because these are kind of like the background. They're going to be a little blended and blurry. We want more of the focus to be on these mushrooms. So I'm going to make these little plants and things like that a little bit blurry. So I'm adding the paint, and then I'm using the corner of my brush to swirl and move the paint around and try to create a bit of a blend to my background. Okay, some of them could be sharp, but not too much, okay? So I'm going to continue with the lightest color. Let's add some in here. Randomly, right? We don't know, maybe these are branches and bushes and things that you can barely see. I'm going to go up in here, add a little bit in here. I'm not going to do too much. Maybe a little bit in here, and then it's going to fade away. That's good enough. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more in here. Brighter ones. And I'm going to continue fading it to this mushroom. Like this. And start to add the same color. I'm going to add some brighter ones, and maybe these are a little bit closer, so they're going to be a little bit more vibrant and more sharper, and a little bigger because they're closer to us. Okay, and just blend it out. Use the corner of your brush, and some of them could be going down like this. It does not have to all go this way. Switch it up a little bit. Okay, that's good enough. Not gonna overdo it here. All right, so now I'm gonna use a little bit of a darker green. A little bit of that. Maybe even let's use some of these. Let's use this one right here. Mix it with the darker green actually. And we're gonna go in here and add some darker ones. Actually, let's use a little more of this color and less green. Play with those two, but we want a little more green. are more of the darker color, but have that green in there for these ones. Maybe these are in the shade and you can barely see them. Okay, so now I'm going to use this color and try to, actually let's use also the darkest color. I'm going to try to add some shadows, separations, for example right here. I'm going to add a little bit of separations. A little more shadows and things like that in here. Maybe use this color. Skipping some areas, you know. Okay, this is very simple. We don't want to overdo the background, so we want it to still be simple. Okay, so a little more in here maybe. Add some darker shadows and not too much. But that's good right there. Okay. Maybe add a little bit of this darker color. And let's add the shadow, darker shadow. In here, kind of going down. That's good right there. This darker color. And here. Just a little bit of that in here. That's good enough. Okay, I'm going to use this color again with water. Try to make it a little blended. Okay, and now I'm going to go over again with the lightest color. Okay, I'm going to go over these and add one more round like we did with the trees. In order to make them look a little softer, you have to add layers to them. So I'm going to skip some of them. And make some of them, so the brightest color, green. Maybe add a few more. Okay, and then you can go back to this green color. Let's mix it with this one so it won't be too sharp, too strong. And we're going to go over around very simple. Maybe add a little bit of that green around here randomly. And now I'm going to use a little bit of this darker color and green. Again, I'm going to add a darker shadow around here where the mushroom, on the bottom here. A little more green on the bottom around. And let's use a little bit of this darker color, not too much, randomly around these mushrooms. I'm going to add a little bit of the darker green like this. Okay, Very simple. And finally, we're going to add a little bit of a lighter color just to make it stand out a little bit on some of them. So remember this green, it's kind of drying out because I was working for a while, but that's okay. That's why I like to pilot, because inside the top layer kind of dries out, but if you have paint, but inside if you squeeze, you still have the paint, you know? So I could mix more, and it doesn't have to be this exact shade, but I want to use up my paint. I don't want to let the paint go to waste. So a little bit of this lighter color, and we're going to add a little bit more lighter little details. Use the corner of your brush and kind of add that brighter highlight. That'll make it more like the light is hitting some of these and they're glowing a little bit. We're just gonna add a few. Maybe a little bit in here. Okay, very, very simple. And now I'm going to use this green by itself, and I'm going to try to add a little bit of more sharper details. As things get closer, they become a little more sharper. And finally, I want to create a separation, so I'm going to use the darkest color we have mixed, okay? And I want to create a separation from this side to and this one. On the bottom here, I want to add a little bit of that was a little too intense, that's okay. Let's use this color, because I don't want it to be super dark yet. So I just kind of randomly mix those two, but I want this to be more of a separation here, just to create variety and depth in my painting. Right, and a little more of this darker color in this one, and we're just going to continue working our way and fading it out. Okay, that's good. Dab my brush in water and swirl and try to blend those in randomly. Use the darkest color now. I'm going to add a little bit of that darker color in here. Okay, something like this. Maybe a little bit in here, a glaze. And I'm gonna do the same thing, add a few in here, and I'm gonna use a little bit of this light one, maybe darker green. Mix those randomly together because I want this to be a little more faded. In fact, let's actually add Viridian by itself, and I'll show you why. Because I want this to be a little more on the cooler side, so I'm going to use a little bit of Viridian by itself. And we're going to add a little bit of the same idea. Let's mix it with a little bit of a lighter color. And same idea, we're going to try to add a little bit more of little plants that are blurry in the background that you can barely see. And I'm just going to swirl and try to create little details like this. This is all going to be in the background, so you can barely see these little plants and things like that. Okay, so a little more Viridian and this color. We're going to continue and maybe bring it down. Okay, and it's going to fade away. There's going to be some closer plants that are going to be detailed, and I'll show you once we get to that. These are just the blurry background plants. So we can go a little lighter here where the light is hitting, just a little bit lighter, and kind of add a little more brighter plants here. Okay, something like this. And now this part, I'm going to make it super dark. So I'm going to pick up my number 8 and quickly make it a little dark. So that's why I mixed this one greenish black, right? It's going to be very dark here. And we're just going to add it right against this with water and a little bit of this color. We're just going to swirl. And like I said, it's okay if you go over your mushrooms. That was a sketch, and we're going to come back and go over it again. So a little bit of this dark color, and just gonna because I have water, it runs smoothly and it's gonna fade out. So I'm going to swirl my brush. Okay. I'm going to try to mix, maybe use a little bit of this next color so it can match here. Try to blend those in smoothly. Okay, here I'm going to use a little bit of this green, and in this black. I want it to be a smooth transition between those two colors. A little bit more of the brighter green. Okay, and continue with the darkest color. Just gonna glaze it like this. Just adding that another layer. And then we can use a little bit more lighter green and a little bit darker color underneath our okay. So a little bit more of that darker color in here. Okay, and for this part, I'm going to quickly cover using my M2 blending brush. I'm going to dab it all the way in the water, squeeze it out like we did in the beginning, blending. And I'm going to just add this middle green, right? This is where it's going to start. Actually, we can even add the lighter green, why not? Right there, this is where the lightest area will be. So it's like, this is halfway through the canvas. I'm going like 2 inches down and making kind of like this line going down like this and fading it out quickly and randomly. And then here, there's going to be, it's going a little lower than that one down. And we're just going to add the light highlights like this first, randomly, right? And then as we go down, we can start to add the darkest color randomly, like this, and swirl your brush and just with water and kind of randomly add your dark shadows. This is the darker part, so it's going to be. And if the background is kind of showing too, that's fine too. Make it creates more variety and interesting. Okay, makes your painting look interesting. And this is like kind of a rough sketch, so bear with me here. And now I'm going to dab my brush in the water, squeeze part of it out, and for this part I want to make it a little more green, maybe darker green, so randomly mix those two together. And right here I want to just create a darker green right where we left off. And let it fade out. Okay, you could use a little more of the darker color. And now we're going to start to add a little more contrast, leaves and grass and details up close here. And now it's going to really start to come together nicely because we got the whole background all done right here, this section. And now we're going to start to add a lot of little details and grass, and then quickly do that. And then the next step after that is working on the mushrooms. And after the mushrooms, we'll just finish up here on the bottom. So this is the colors I have added. A little bit of white and more lemon yellow. More lemon yellow because when things are closer, they're going to be more vibrant in color and brighter because of the light. I want to create some, separation between this and then this color, and you'll see. And then a little less white here, more sap green and lemon yellow, a little bit of that there, about the same amount like white. And then sap green and lemon black, and then sap green by itself. And these are the colors I have. Let's pick up our flat brush, dab it in the water. I'm going to tap it on the paper towel. And with this, let's start with this color. With this brush and this middle green color, we're going to start to add a little more closer leaves and grassy things, vines and things like that. So I'm going to add, my first one will be probably right in here, probably. Okay, something like this. And then maybe there's one next to it, and okay, continue with that color. When I have one that's coming down here. And then maybe there's one next to it like this. And you can have your shape be different. It's totally up to you. Okay, we're just adding these little details now. Starting to add things that are closer now. I'm going to continue bringing it down with the same color. And as I go a little bit lower, I'm going to use a little bit of a darker green. So I'm going to mix those two, get an in-between color, because it's going into the shadows, right? bunch of little ones here, darker ones. Use the corner of your brush and just randomly add them where you think will look the best. Okay, dab my brush lightly in the water, tap it on the paper towel, use a little bit of this green, mix those two together, continue playing with this color. We're going to add some little ones and a few more. Maybe there's some skinnier branches. Variety of different kinds of things in here growing. So use the same color, the dark one, and let's add some in here as well, in the shadows growing. And then as we get closer to the light, they're going to be a little bit brighter. A little bit more brighter. Let's mix it with this darker one again and bring it down. Some little ones. Brighter one. Use this green again, and I'm going to add a little bit of a let's actually use the lightest color now. We're going to start to add a little bit of brighter details here. Not everywhere, but you could see just adding that makes it interesting looking. And you could use your detail brush as well. I'm just adding this, going over and using this brush first, but obviously detail brush might be more cleaner. Okay, totally up to you. Okay, and now I'm going to back to this green, and I'm going to add some in here. A little. Okay, little leaves, things like that. Okay, maybe make some of them a little brighter. Okay, use the brightest color right here, and I'm going to add a little bit of that highlight on some of these from the light. Just gonna gently glaze it. And that's good enough. Something like this. Okay. Go back to this green, make some of these a little bit brighter in here. Use a little bit of this darker color, take away the sharpness a bit. That's good enough. All right, so I'm going to continue with this light green. And right here, I'm going to make this a little bit brighter because it's closer. Just add a few of those highlights It's important because these are closer now. We don't want it to be too detailed, but because these are closer bushes and grass, they're going to have a little bit more finer detail than that's good right there. All right, our first layers are done. Okay. We can go in with a lighter color in here. Maybe there's a little separation between that and this. Okay, and now with the detail brush, I'm going to clean my brush for now. And we're going to come back to making it a little cleaner. But with the detail brush, I'm going to use this darkest color that we have mixed and some water. I'm going to swirl my brush like this, and then I'm going to connect these and try to maybe make it even taller. So, for example, right here, I'm going to go down. And with water, I'm going to create this nice connection. Right, all the way down. Like this. Okay, and we're going to do a couple of those. So maybe there's one in here, going sideways. Maybe there's one that's kind of going out this way. You want to create variety. Okay, and you might have to dab your brush in water and constantly go back and forth until you get the solid line like this. And of course you can, add some smaller ones that are maybe kind of there in the back. Like this. Okay, dab my brush in the water, continue. And just fade it out. So because I went a little higher, I wanted to add a little higher. I'm going to add a little bit more, maybe on this side, just a little bit more. Make it a little darker here. Okay, just like that, and then maybe on this one as well. Let's add some little ones. Okay, you could use the lighter color to create some highlights like we did. With the other ones here. That's good right there. I'm going to add a few more, maybe this green on this side, lighter ones. Okay, and I'm going to have my detail brush now, use the same color, this darkest color, and connect some of these. Barely pressing and make little connections. Okay, very small amount. Use more water, barely pressing, connect them like this. And you can have fun and do things like this with your detail brush, the lightest yellow color. You can go back in here and try to add some of these. Maybe there's little branches that are maybe bright from the light. Maybe there's a branch that goes like this and straight down. Just like this, not too much, but you could see a few little details right there. Makes a difference. And of course, now you can go back with your detail brush and really connect some of these and make them small, add your highlights, brighter highlights, right? And fade it out. We don't want to add too much on the bottom, mainly on top right there. Okay, and also we can use a little bit of this green and water, and on the left side, because that's where the light is coming from, the left to the right, I'm going to go over and add a little fine highlight to these. Okay, that creates a nice highlight to my vines and things like that. So continue. Okay, and on this side as well. All right. And of course, you can go back to your dark color and connect some of these, go back and forth and try to make some of these a little bit more detailed. And once you're done adding details, I'll work on it, basically going back and touching everything and doing what I showed you until I'm happy with it. But finally, once you're done with these, use the sap green and your number 4 brush with some water. And we're gonna make it even greener, brighter. especially the ones on the bottom here. I'm going to add that green to these because I want them to be a little more vibrant, different, because we want to create variety of color. So the backgrounds trees are faded green, and the ones that are closer, you could see straight from the tube, you start using these greens and you start to notice, oh wow, yeah, they are much vibrant, and you could tell that they're closer now when you add these little So I'll work on that part later, but I want to finish it up here, add a few more details before I do. So on this part, I'm going to pick up my flat brush, and I did add Viridian. Okay, so I'm going to use a little bit of this color mixed with Viridian. I want it to be like a more of a cooler green, something like this. And we're going to add some bigger ones because this is where things are the closest to us. So for example, there'll be a big leaf kind of coming down like this, and just glaze it like that. Maybe there's another one like this. Continue on with that color, and when you have too much water, it starts to drip, so I'm going to tap it on the paper towel, pick up more paint. A little more Viridian. Okay, more Viridian. And you'll see it's all going to come together once we start to add a little more detail. But we're just placing our leaves where we think would look best. So maybe another leaf right in here. Make this one bigger so it could match that one. Okay, let's use a little bit of brighter green now and continue randomly adding your little ones. Let's use Viridian, lighter green. A little bit more. You start to see the forest come to life, adding all these beautiful details. So I'm using the corner of my brush and I'm playing with my brush, going back and forth, trying to let it naturally form. Naturally happen. My little grass and leaves and things like that. So here I'm going to use the brightest color because the light will be hitting this spot right here, and I'm just going to make some of this path a little more vibrant. like we did right there. Randomly adding a bunch of random details like this. The more you add different highlights, and so the brightest color, the more interesting your painting will look. Okay, so let's use this green. Use the brightest color here again. And we're going to fade it out. Okay, a rough sketch. Let's use sap green. A little bit more in here. And some of these, by the way, we can go back, for example, right here. And since I drew that, we can go back and cover them again. You know, you want to create variety. Some leaves are coming towards us, right? So, okay. And anyway, I'll come back to this part later. Now we can add a few more details. For example, I'll show you. We can use our detail brush, right? And we can use this green and add details like this. For example, maybe there's right, something in here, growing, and then, and you can add all these beautiful little highlights and things in your grass and your forest, as many as you want. So with water and your green, and we're just going to continue. This can go and kind of go even a little bigger. And then maybe there's something here similar. Maybe there's another one growing in here. And, you know, we'll come back to adding all these little details again, but I'm just showing you that you want to make it a little full and detailed here. So I'm going to use my number 4 brush real quick and this green, and I'm going to Just gently kind of follow the pattern. Okay, something like this. And I'm barely pressing, by the way. Same thing here, barely pressing. That way it creates this cool effect. And now we're going to use this sponge right here. I'm going to dab it all the way in the water and show you what cool effect this does. So now that it's nice and soft, I'm going to use, let's start with this green. Okay, so you could see that it has nice paint in it. Now it's going to create really cool moss effect. And I'm just going to gently press, not do it everywhere, but just press and skip some areas and mainly do where the highlights are and create my cool moss effect. Little details that is time consuming if I were to do it with my detail brush, so this saves a lot of time. Okay. See how nice that works? Very cool. I love using artist sponges to create more texture to my paintings. And you can, fade it out. Same thing here. Okay, so the highlight, let's use the brightest color now, this yellow. And this is where the brightest part of the highlight will be. So I'm barely pressing. I'll let it fade. So something like this. Okay, and then you can add the bright highlight in here. Like this. Create some separations. And then also you could use this as well on this one. Remember this? Let's add a little more details, barely pressing. And if you didn't like something, like that's a little too tall, I mean that works, but I'm gonna use a paper towel and dab it in the water and just kind of wipe it off like this. I don't want it to be too high. Just a little less like that. Let's add a few in here, not too much. And then I'm going to clean my sponge. Just squeeze it in the water jar. Get most of the paint out. It doesn't have to be perfect. And now I'm going to use this sap green and try to add a little bit of sap green straight out of the tube to create even more vibrant tones. And you might have to do this, go back and forth, and you might have to add the same colors going back and forth until you're happy with it, right? Also, if you don't have an artist sponge, you can do this with your number 8 and number 4 brushes. Just keep that in mind, that that's okay if you don't have it. You can still make this effect, similar effect, with number 8 or number 4. So a little more, as you can see, I'm just randomly adding it in here and letting it fade. I want to create a nice fade from lightest, and if you need to, I'm going to add a little more of, try to add a little bit more smoother transition. Okay, that's good enough for now, but you could start to see it's looking a lot better and cleaner, more detailed. And now this is what I mean by you can do the same thing, and let's use our number 4 and this brush, or number 4 and this lightest color, and you can dab it. I want to make this actually pretty straight, so I'm gonna go and add my highlight, sharper highlight in here. And you can let it fade out. Gently pressing. Same thing here. I'm going to actually use a little bit of this lighter, or the next green. Okay, and or you can use a number 8 brush, and you can dab it like this. It still kind of creates that effect, you see, similar in a way. So if you don't have an artist sponge, you just dab your brush like this. So a little more of this color. There you go. So now, like I said, I'm going to go back now and start to detail everything that we did here, just to add a few more sharper highlights. If you're loving this tutorial and you're ready to go deeper with your painting, I'd love to invite you to my mentorship program. This is where I teach my most in-depth lessons, the ones I don't share anywhere else. Inside the mentorship, you'll get access to exclusive full-length tutorials, personalized feedback on your paintings from me, live Q&A calls where you can connect and ask questions, monthly painting challenges, giveaways, and more. This is my inner circle of artists who are serious about growing their skills. It's been amazing to see the progress our members make, and I'd love for you to join us. If you're interested, there'll be a link in the screen or also in the description down below. All right, let's get back to painting. And this is what I got so far. You can see I spent a lot of time with my detail brush going over with the same colors, basically trying to make it a little cleaner and sharper, and trying to add as much detail as I thought would look good for this piece. So I went over and added some more sharper looking highlights, going over with the light color and then creating a darker shadow with the darkest color so that it can be sharper. But Now let's continue. This is totally up to you how much detail you want to add here. We're gonna now finalize this painting by adding all our details to our mushrooms. And the first thing I'm gonna do is work on these things right here, okay? And then we'll work on the top parts. So this is what I have. A little bit of a less thumb amount of white here, small amount of raw sienna and orange, less white, more raw sienna, and more orange, and then very small amount of white, raw sienna, the most of it out of these, and then sap green, orange, and lamb black. And finally, let's add a little bit of lamb black and scarlet red, small amount, and I'm going to take part of this color, about this much, something like this, and I'm going to mix it with this last one. I want this one to be the darkest shadow. So something like this. So let's pick up our flat brush and dab it in the water and tap it on the paper towel. And we're going to start by adding a quick sketch first on the edges to make it look a little more sharper. So I'm going to actually pick up a little more water so it can run smooth. And for the first one right here, we're just going to go over right where we added our sketch. Okay. And then I'm going to go over in here, try to make this one a little bit okay. Highlights. So this area, the light is going to kind of shine through and hit part of this bottom area. So I'm going to add the brightest area right in here. Okay, and these ones. And this little one right here. And now I'm going to use this color and go over and try to make it. We could actually use the darkest color. Let's use the darkest color for this part. We're just shaping this part first. And for these other parts, we can use a little bit of a lighter color so it won't blend in with the background. Okay, something like this. Same thing here. Real quick. And your shape could be different. All right, so now we kind of made it a little more sharper, right? I'm going to clean my flat brush and lay it flat on the paper towel. You don't want to leave your flat brush in the water jar because that can damage over time and it won't be as sharp. So that is why I just kind of quickly clean it and put it flat. Same thing with the detail brush. You want to leave it flat. The only brushes I leave in the water are my number 4 and number 8 brushes. And an artist sponge, and sometimes I'll leave my blending brushes. If it's not sitting there too long, I'll leave it in there. That's fine too. Let's continue. So now I'm going to use this color in my number 4 brush and start to add that color in there. Okay, a little bit of that color. I'm gonna go right to the edge of where we added. Okay, a little bit on this one too. Very easy, simple, not too complicated. And now we're going to use the next color, this darker one. And bring it down more on the right side, right? Because the light is hitting our left. Same thing here. There's a shadow. So I'm going to bring this one. Okay, a little more on this side. Very easy and simple. Okay, now I'm going to clean my brush and use the darkest color here. Okay, and start to add a little bit more darker shadows, barely pressing. Okay, creating this cool effect with some water and this darkest color. Okay, something like that. Same thing to all these other ones. Want to create a shadow, and then more on the left side of the mushrooms. Okay, and this one right here. Gently pressing, I'm not adding too much. Barely pressing here. And then we're going to add that on this one as well. And so now I'm going to go back to my number 4 brush and add a little bit more highlights, for example, with this brightest color. And I'm barely going to press and make my mushroom have some texture to it. So I'm going to kind of dab, but also create this brightest glow to my mushroom. Too much water, that's okay. I'm going to tap it on the paper towel and just pick up the paint. We don't want a lot of water for this part. that's it. I'm not going to add too much. I just want to create that highlight more on the left side. Let it fade out, going down. Okay, that's good right there. So something like that, and then I'm going to add a little bit on all these other mushrooms. Similar highlights to make him pop a little better. Okay. And I'm not going to add on these. I'm going to use a little bit of a darker color. So now I'm going to just wipe off my brush, and I'm going to use this next color and continue adding your highlights, but with this next color. I use a little bit of this color and mix those, get it in between. Now you can make it even more, have a little more texture by adding with your detail brush. Let's add a little bit of this color and this darkest. Let's just get an in-between color right there. And we're gonna start to add a little bit more little details like this to our mushroom. Little texture, things like that. Okay, very little amount. Same thing here. You can even go over a little bit here. So it won't look too smooth. We want to make it look a little rough. And finally, I'm gonna add orange straight out of the tube in my number 4 brush, clean it out, and use a little bit of water and orange, and we're gonna add a glaze to make our mushrooms look a little warmer and have glow, look like it has a glow on them, right? So for example, just water and this orange straight out of the tube. I'm gonna add that right here. That'll make it stand out a little more, so it won't look dull. These are closer mushrooms, so they're going to be colorful. We want to start to add a little more color to them, because then they'll really pop, and that's what we want. So a little glaze, not too much, on all of them, like this. Okay? So once you're done adding, and then of course with your detail brush, you can come back, and with your lightest color, you can try to go over some of these and make it a little bit more sharper. Right? So take your time and work until you're happy with these colors going back and forth like I showed you. And once you're done, we can move on to the next section, the final section. Actually, before we continue to this part, I'm going to finish this area right here because it requires similar colors here. So first we're going to use our number 4 brush, and we're going to add the dark colors on the edges right here. Just go over and create dark glaze. And kind of follow, go like this and start to follow a little bit. Okay, just like this, and then in here as well, right on the edge, real quick. And dab my brush in water. I'm going to use this color next. And randomly add that in. Something like this. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit more black, very small amount, just a little bit, and I'll show you why. Because it's more in the shadow, more in the darker area, so I'm gonna use still this color, right, but just a little more black, a little bit more, not too much. And right on the edge, I want to make this a little more, have a little more depth and contrast to it, especially on this side right here, and kind of glaze it. Down my brush in water, and I'm going to bring that color down. Go back to this color again, and continue adding the glaze. We want to create a soft transition. And then, of course, with this darkest color right here, right, we're going to create a shadow. Okay. And now I'm going to switch to my detail brush for this part and add a little bit of this lighter color right here and start to add details, for example, right here. Okay, dab my brush in water, use a little more. Make sure you follow the pattern, the shape. So just this color and some water. Okay, and continue that. A little more water so it could run smooth. Okay. So a little more water and paint. And we're just going to continue bringing it. Oops. Okay, a little more with this color. Make it brighter, mainly in the middle right here on some of these. And there you go. And then, of course, you can darken some of this. So I'm going to use this and a little bit of black. And I'm going to go over and go around here. Try to make this have a little bit of separation and shadow. It gives it a little more depth. Okay, something like this. And you'll be good to go. And of course you could use your darker color again and go over these parts and back and forth until you're happy. And we could do that similar idea, so start with the darkest color, to some of these mushrooms here. I'm just going to have a little bit of a showing. Okay, maybe in here, barely showing, you won't even see it. That's good enough for now. And then use this color. And then glaze it over like this. And of course, with your detail brush, go and try to create similar effect. This kind of blends in there. You won't even see it that much because it's showing a little bit. Okay, it's showing barely. And then same thing here, barely showing. You won't even see much of it. Something like this. Okay, and I'm going to add a little bit of this color. Mix it with this. And in here I'm going to add, maybe even use a little bit of a darker color right here. Okay, and with our detail brush, we're gonna go back to this lighter color. We're gonna add the shape on the bottom. It's not going to be perfect. So just do like little, and we're going to go over this part again, but I'm just getting a quick sketch, and you'll see it'll all make sense once I start to add a little more details. But that's good for now. And then of course we can, with our darkest color here, we can go over and add the shadows. All right, and finally we can come back to any of these parts later. Let's continue for adding the tops as the final thing. So a little bit of white, lemon yellow, small amount, less white here, more lemon yellow, and orange, more orange. A little bit of orange and scarlet red, and then scarlet red and lamb black, a little bit of that. And these are the colors I got. So something like this and you'll be good to go. So we're gonna make our mushrooms pop. This is the fun part. So I'm gonna use my number 4 brush, clean it out, start to add the first layers. Let's add a little bit of this lightest color and go over our shape of the mushroom again. Kind of go over it like this roughly, and it doesn't have to be a perfect circle, okay? And it's gonna fade in over there. So something like this. Okay, a little bit of this lightest color. Let's use this, let's just work one at a time. Let's go with orange, and we're gonna really make it glow right now. Just orange by itself first, and as you go down here, it's gonna go to the red. Very nice color right here. Okay, something like this for the first one. So we'll let that dry, and let's continue with the other little ones. So again, we're gonna start with this orange, and let's add it right where we think it needs to be, and yours could be bigger, smaller. And then let's add the red. A little more red, right up until that point. Okay, that's good right there for now. We'll come back. Actually, let's use a little more orange and kind of add it more on top right here. That's good enough. All right, next we're gonna do the same thing as always with that orange first, and we're gonna bring it down. So a little more orange. And then the red. Go up until that point. We want some of it showing like this. It makes it more interesting. And then for the final two, do the same idea and glaze that orange and then add the red. A little bit of that orange to the little one. And then the red. Okay, and now I'm going to switch my brush to number 8 and do the same thing. Let's start with this color. Actually, let's use the lighter color real quick on top. Mix it with the orange, why not? And then as I go down, I'm going to use the red. Use the red, maybe more orange right here. And then for this bottom part, I'm going to use the darkest color we have mixed, the darker red right in here. Add it on the bottom. Because we want to make it look curvy. So that's why it's important to add these shadows with color as well, so that it could look like it's, you know, making a little curve. And we'll do that same thing, same idea with our number 4 brush. We're gonna use the darkest color and right on the bottom like we did to the other one. We're just gonna go over a little bit, not much. A little bit on this one and then a little bit of on this one, not too much. And on this one as well. Okay, that's good right there. We're gonna let that dry, and then what we're gonna do is, before adding another layer, we're going to add little details, and I'll show you. Little light details with our number 4 brush. I cleaned it out. And this brightest color, we're going to start to add these little circles to our mushrooms. Maybe a little circle here, and you could use your, maybe detail brush would work better. So whatever one you're most comfortable with. I'm just kind of getting the placements first. Okay. So something like that for the first one. For the second one, they're going to be a little bigger. Okay, maybe there's one little one. And you could totally place them where you want yours to be. Okay, maybe a little bit on this one. A couple little ones. That's good enough. And then on these. Maybe I'll switch because this is for the smaller parts. I'm gonna use my detail brush for the smaller mushrooms, and I'm gonna add little details too. This mushroom here. Okay, that's good for that one, and a little bit on this one as well. Like I said, you can place them wherever you feel would look best. And finally, these last ones. Maybe they don't have as much, so I'm gonna leave it, add a few, and that's it. And now with the detail brush, before we continue, I'm gonna use this color right here and maybe mix it with a little bit of orange. Something like this, more lighter. And we're gonna go over right here and make it a little sharper and cleaner. Like this, with water and this color, okay? Okay, same color. We're going to add it in here. Add a little brighter highlight to this one. Okay, continue. You could even add details, a little highlights with this lighter color going like this, you know, so that it won't look too perfect. And just add your bright highlights like this, make it look detailed, and go over all of them and then do the same thing, okay? Do the same thing, add your highlights. Try to make it cleaner looking, sharper. So I'm dabbing my brush in the water constantly. And picking up this color, going over and trying to make it as clean as I can. And so now I'm going to repeat the process using the same colors in my number 4 and try to make it even more brighter. Right? And then use the red with water and kind of, and it's okay if you go over the lighter parts you already added. We will go back and make it even more sharper. But I just want to add one more layer to make it look a little more solid. So a little more orange here. We could use a little bit of this lighter color in orange. Make it a little brighter on some of these. And then finally this one right here. Making some of these have a little more texture for fun. Why not? Some lighter highlights around some of these areas. Okay, a little more orange. And then the darkest color. A little bit of this brownish color here for this part. Actually, I'm going to clean my brush and use the darker color actually. Try to make it a little darker on the bottom right here. Okay. So using just the black now and adding a little bit of details like this. And basically, the last thing is going over those lighter parts and making it a little more cleaner and try to make it stand out a little more, okay? So that's what I'm going to do, basically to all of them. And you can use your detail brush for this part as well. You can go back and try to make these more solid looking circles. And they don't need to be perfect circles. Some will be more like this, maybe, you know, switch it up. Okay, maybe there's a little one right in here. This is where the light is hitting this mushroom the most. So it's going to be pretty bright on this side. And there you go. All right, so I'm going to spend some time finalizing, going back and forth until I'm happy with this same idea with these colors we have here, and I'm going to play until I'm happy with it. So totally up to you how much details you want to add. All right, I'll be done for today. You could spend as much time as you want adding details and color to your mushrooms, leaves, grass, moss, whatever you want. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Thank you guys for being here. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more. Take care and God bless.